Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here. If you don't know the wonderful team around you, I'd love for you to say hi to Kenny Lange. Hi, Kenny. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. We are so lucky. We are joined by Grace Gavin of No Honesty. She's an author. She's an open and honest expert. She helps leaders simplify their communication and eliminate the divides that exist within organizations. She is one of the co-founders, and she guides people towards becoming masterful communicators day in and day out. Having experienced the transformative power of openness and honesty, Grace is on a mission to help others create that same freedom in their own lives. Welcome to the podcast, Grace.
Thank you, Kyle, Kenny, for having me here. I am pumped. Let's do this.
We'll see.
Grace for impact.
We'll see. Because we're going to start with rapid fire questions. Two of them I think are pretty easy. The third one is going to come from left field. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
And then we're going to go wherever we go. Question number one, because we know you are very humble. We know that you have not gotten here by yourself. Is there a business mentor you would love to shout out and just give some love to so that you can be absolutely not humble the rest of the way and share your brilliance?
Oh, everybody who's ever been in my career. Can I say that? Really, though, Ken Bogard, he saw something in me before I ever saw it in myself and continues every single day. Even when I say, man, Ken, I think I suck at all of this. He goes, no, stop. You stop. You know what you're doing. It's great. And he gives me encouragement and wisdom every single day. So he continues to be such a blessing in my life.
And he's the co-founder of No Honesty, correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, shout out, Ken. This is a good one for you. We're glad to have you. All right. Number two, what's one thing you wish every small business owner, and remember, we're talking to nonprofits and for-profits, because for-profits and nonprofits, doesn't matter which one you are, no margin, no mission. What's one thing you wish they knew?
We're going to get into this more, but I wish they knew the power of what happens when you're intentional about your communication with your team and everybody else that touches your organization, but we'll stick with team for now.
Okay. That's a good preface for today's episode for sure.
Yeah.
Question number three, actually the most important question. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Go.
This is really not what I was expecting. I'm going to say yes, because what else would it be?
Well, one may say it's a taco.
Oh, no. See, my husband's half Mexican. My mother-in-law would not like that. That is not a taco. Definitely. If those were the options, I'd pick sandwich. And then the other option, I was thinking, well, it's just a category all on its own. It's this weird thing that we for some reason agree to eat and like to eat. I don't know. I'm not a huge hot dog fan. So
it's a category of one. That's funny. This is what I meant when I knew that I was telling Kenny that everybody has an opinion on this question and it would come out, and you were hard no on taco, but let me at least make a case for taco real fast. It is a
cultural appropriation.
It's a V-shaped, consumption device.
Yep.
You put the meat
carb
in.
Base.
Carb base. Thank you. Carb base is perfect. And you put toppings on top. If I were to describe that, you would probably come to taco. But the shape and the design, and here's the part that got me on the taco train for this question, was for a sandwich, you eat straight on. For a taco, you tilt. For a hot dog, you tilt. Just saying.
I don't know. I think my jaw unhinges much like a viper. I don't know that I have the
taco.
Well, at least on a hot dog, I think I can go straight on.
All right.
I think I
hear your logic. I appreciate your logic. Still no.
And thank you, Grace, for demonstrating the power of clear and compelling communication. Of you let Kyle have his say. You honored his opinion while shooting it down.
Yeah.
And that's
shooting it down.
Yeah, beautifully. You did so with grace, one might say.
Now that's a joke that I never get.
You're right. Yeah. Wah, wah.
If you want to make a South Park joke at mine and Kyle's expense.
Yeah, I really almost did when we started. I was like, hang on a second. I've heard that before.
Oh, it's bad. Please take advantage of that.
Yeah, just don't talk about Kyle's mom.
Yeah, don't.
Thank you for getting that.
Oh man. Okay.
Oh,
All
man.
right.
Grace,
I'm
I
not
think you've got a
dead.
vibe
God's
check
not
now.
done.
I think you understand where we're playing. Now, I will get us a little bit into business because I just saw your presentation at the second gear group meeting, which was brilliant. I had tons of great feedback from it. So thank you for your time there. You talked that there is a difference between openness and honesty. And in your not shutdown, you're stating your opinion about the hot dog situation. Was that openness or was that honesty? And maybe that will be a good place, a good hook for us to start on.
Oh, I love it. And I love that we have an example already to start with because that makes it really fun. And the fact that we're talking about hot dogs and tacos. And anyways, I'm trying not to get upset there.
Okay.
Anyways, so what we talk about in No Honesty when it comes to communication, we want it to be really clear and very simple. And so what we found is that the foundation of communication is open and honest. Now, we hear open and honest all the time, especially if you are around the second gear group, around the EOS world, you hear open and honest almost insistently. But we don't really know what that means, or we don't really talk about in depth. All right, what does that look like? And so I'm going to use this example of Kyle and I going back and forth. But to be clear, the definitions here, honesty, what we mean by that is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. So that's Kyle making his case for the hot dog being a taco. On the other side of that is openness, and this is where we think about it differently than maybe what I'll say culture says it is. So openness we define as listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. So what you'll see, or I guess maybe you can't see it as well, but in this example, when Kyle is explaining his argument for the hot dog as a taco, I am absolutely best I can shutting down my need to argue back to defend my position, and I'm just listening to what he has to say. And what you'll see when I replied back, I see you, I hear you, still no. That's my honesty on the other side of it. Because a lot of times I'll have leaders come to me and they'll say, Grace, I think openness is really great, but I don't really need to agree with my people all the time. And I want to be so clear. You can be open to somebody and not agree with them. And in fact, I think it means more when you don't agree because you're actually listening to what they have to say. And you can come to an understanding of each other. Maybe not an agreement, but at least okay, I know where Kyle's head's at. I see where he's coming on these types of things. Still don't agree with him. And I think it makes for better relationships. And when you have better relationships, we're talking in the context of business, makes for better business, but also just makes for a better life.
I would agree with that. I'm curious, can you walk us through the arrival at those definitions, in part because I'm struck by your definition of open, maybe more so than honest, simply because it seems like you've positioned open to be the recipient of the communication, right? Like send, receive, that sort of, communication diagram that's been around for forever. Whereas I would think the context in which I've heard, be open is more about how you are sending communication. Like, am I being open? Like I could be honest and withholding at the same time, right? Like honest may be truthful, but am I truthful about everything? And that may have to do with like open or closed. Like, am I narrowly honest? Am I broadly honest? Can you take us through how you arrived there and why those definitions are important?
I love it. I'm going to give you space to react to that, Grace, because I've definitely heard of open as letting it fly. Open yourself up and let it fly. So I am actually really curious because I hadn't noticed that nuance. So
yeah, it was, man, the journey that we went down to find these exact definitions. Like I'm talking Ken and I at a whiteboard for hours and saying, is this really the right word? Like very specifically, I remember a discussion we had around openness when we say listening without reservation. Reservation was a very specific word choice because in it can contain preconceived notions, assumptions, judgments, all reservations that we have around other people or ideas or however you want to say that. And so the definitions came to be a labor of love there. And the way that I like to think about it differently is because for that exact reason that we, as human beings in general, we tend to just think about ourselves and we think about ourselves first in a conversation a lot of the time. And so we're missing the entire other half. And what a better way to help understand two halves of communication than open and honest, which we're already familiar with. We're just flipping one of them on its head a little bit. And that's also part of why in the definition of honesty is being truly and freely yourself. If you are doing that, I would say that, in the traditional sense of the word prior, you're being an open book or transparent. So that's all wrapped up into that side. But it was really the question of how do we help people understand really that give and receive there in words that they already understand, just thinking about it differently. Because what we found is that, people wanted to be honest, but what was it that was stopping them or blocking them? And it was really the question on the other side of, is this person going to be receptive of what I have to say? Are they going to hear out my idea that I have for this next quarter? Are they going to take this criticism that I have of somebody on their team? And if I feel like they're not going to be open to it, then the likelihood that I'm going to be honest with them in any way that really matters drops dramatically. Does that answer your question, Kenny?
It does, and gives me a few more, so I love that. Then based on what you just said, does openness or perception of openness, does it always precede honesty? In your methodology and in the way you teach and work with teams, is it incumbent on the senior most leader or whoever to create the state of openness so that others can be honest, or in a waterfall style, or can this be a little more agile to where it's sort of a both and simultaneous?
That is such a good question. I like to think of it more as the both and, but the way I also think about it and the way that we talk about it is, especially if you're in more of the position of a power dynamic, like you're saying about leaders versus the people underneath them, you do have to go first. And so how do you start a conversation? Well, it is by being honest, because I'm just open to what you have to say and you're open to what I have to say, then nobody's talking. You know what I'm saying? And so the way that I like to think about, like, how does this work? Who goes first is not so much in the terms of open, honest goes first, because I do think honest goes first. Somebody needs to start the conversation. But it really, when you're talking about leadership, you're spot on, is that leaders have to do this first. Leaders have to exemplify these skills if they can want or expect their people to do the same. Like if I have it all the time where I have leaders will come to me and they'll say, Grace, I just want my people to be honest with me. Like, how hard is it? And I gotta look at them and I gotta say, well, are you being honest with them? Are you modeling it well for them? Are you open to what they even have to say? Because if I'm gonna walk in your door and I'm gonna be honest with you and you're not gonna be receptive to it, then the question in their mind is, what's the point? Why even do it?
So it's almost honest to model.
Yep.
And then they say, oh, that's how we're going to communicate. Then I've got to be open, and being open and remaining open is a bit of the, celebrate what you want to see repeated sort of thing of if, like my kids, if they want to bring something to me and they're just, blunt little beings, I don't know where they get it from, but
I do.
And I shut it down immediately, the chances that they are willing to be honest again, even if I continue to be honest with them, they may be less willing to be honest with me because I've not shown a willingness to be open when it's their turn to be honest. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely. And I don't love comparing leadership to parenting, but there's so many parallels you can't ignore.
Parallels all day.
Yeah.
Good parenting is good leadership, and good leadership is good parenting.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Having parented 21 kids at this point, I feel safe to say, and I'm not joking.
No, this is what makes Kenny special.
I've fostered 18 kids. I have 3 biological children, and I've adopted 2. So I should have my own television show.
This is halfway there.
Now, yeah, there we go. You brought up a word, transparency. A friend of mine used to talk a lot about having hot conversations. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? And he's like, honest, open, and transparent. And I was like, well, that's real cute. But
that's interesting.
But you've mentioned it in your answer, but it's not part of this sort of 2-part dynamic that you've brought up. When you and Ken, again, just great name that he has there. What did y'all decide in all of your whiteboard sessions about where does transparency live? Because I think a lot of people would swap these out, make them interchangeable, right? Like open may mean transparent, like what Kyle was saying. It's just I'm free and it's all out in the open, right? Just letting it fly, or just being, I'm brutally honest, which is I will take issue with, but I'm being just honest, like that's transparent, no poker face. Where does transparency fit in the mix of what y'all have come up with?
Yeah, that's a good question. We got to circle back to brutally honest, because I have some thoughts there too.
Good.
The transparency, I do think it shows up in the honesty side of things. And now I want to be clear, because I think we use transparency sometimes and we just think that means we got to tell everybody everything. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are in an organization of high trust and that won't terrify your people, I think it's fantastic and good on you for doing that. But if you have been for example, closed book company that you've never shared financials with them, and all of a sudden you hand your people a P&L in the service of being transparent with them, and you give them no education around that to understand it, and there's going to be some fear and some panic because they don't have necessarily the knowledge that you have around that. And so that's where I think we say transparent all the time, and they're like, well, how do we actually do that? And I really think it's about being honest 100% to the best ability that we can every single time, and doing it responsibly.
So is it almost an outcome? Like I love creating like formulas and equations and stuff, makes it easier for my simple mind to remember. But I mean, does honest plus open equal transparent? Like, is that the outflow? Because if it's not that, then what does being honest and being open, what is it in service to? What is the end state? Why should I be honest and open and honest, which I think you have to do it in that way. It feels like trials and tribulations. You can't have one without the other. Why do those things? Is the end state transparency, or is it something else?
I'm going to jump in because I think there's something interesting that I woke up to as you were describing your open and honest and talking about the hot dog and the taco. I was noticing that you were open to my opinion on it. I like your body language told me that, your tone of voice told me that, your response told me that. It didn't change your opinion. And that was your honest truth. And even though we disagreed, I felt my respect raise. It sounds ridiculous over a hot dog question, but it does raise respect. So I think one answer that I think is it increases respect.
Yes. And you know what's crazy about that, Kyle, is that when our employees feel heard and respected, they are 4.6 times more empowered to do their best work. So that's what we're talking about, Kenny, when we're talking about in the service of doing these things. And the simple equation that we use is open plus honest equals real communication. Real communication is where everybody is 100% honest, 100% open, working towards that. And what you have when you have real communication on the table is you have an ability to deal with issues and problems and ideas and topics that come up within your team at a much faster rate than if somebody is walking into the room. And what we do as human beings subconsciously, for the most part, I'll say there's probably some people that do it consciously, but we walk into a room subconsciously and we're looking around, and the first thing we're thinking is, am I safe here? Can I say what needs to be said here? Or do I need to protect myself? And if you have a room full of people, and especially at the leadership level, that are all they're trying to do is protect themselves or protect their department, you are not going to get to the most collaborative, innovative ideas and problem solving. So that's what I think when we're talking about, all right, what is open and honest in service of? You're absolutely right. You can go and have a bunch of open and honest conversations all the time, and you'll feel great and you'll have respect with people, which is fantastic. But when we put it into a team setting, the beautiful part of being an organization is that you have a direction you're going towards, and being open and honest and having those real relationships and real communication gets you there a lot faster.
I call this, gotcha. I have a curious question. I call it the green belt problem. So I spent 30 years doing martial arts, and green belt is generally, for most martial arts, about a year into training. And that's right about the time they start thinking they're really good at it. Now, relative to a black belt, it's still a child in their skill. Relative to a 10th degree black belt, it's not even a child of a child. It's like a peon, right? It's nothing. And I bet there are so many people who are listening to this, or who should listen to this, who are not actually open and receptive, but think they are. How do you combat that? Because they're sitting there going, I'm pretty good at this. Like I'm an executive now. I'm open. Yeah, Grace, I know this.
Or it gets into that brutally honest piece, which I want to make
Oh,
sure you,
right.
you,
Yeah,
you,
we
Oh,
can
you
yeah,
go
yeah,
circle
yeah.
back
back.
to that. I bet there's two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they
I'll
might
give you
do
the
the other thing.
two
I'm
that I
honest
think
and
on
they're a
that.
jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the open side of things, one very, very simple question that I can ask people to know if they're really open is I say, when somebody else is talking, are you already pre-populating your response in your head? And if the answer is yes, then you are not very good at being open.
Like listening to respond instead of listening to understand.
Yes,
I call it
absolutely.
Mhm.
seek first to understand before being understood.
Right.
That should be in a book or something. Maybe with 6 other principles.
Interesting.
I wonder.
Interesting. So that's where, and then people say, "Oh, yeah, I do that," and then I get pretty deep into openness and honesty with clients for this exact reason, because they're like, "Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Like, I think I'm good at being open and honest." I'm like, "Okay, I hear you. Let's go there. Let's discover this." And one of the things that we have around both openness and honesty are the 3 essentials. And so the first one is kind of what we're already talking about, but the first one is listening without reservation. So are you listening to understand? Or are you listening to respond? And the other part is, are you walking in with reservations? Are you resistant to Kyle's new idea because his last idea didn't work out so well? You are not being fully open to what Kyle has to say. And I know Kyle's probably had some bad ideas, but I know he's had some really great ones too. We're sitting in the middle of one right now.
It's yet to be
You're hitting
determined
real
if it's a
close.
good idea.
Right, but
He is a
that
visionary,
wakes
so-
people up to it. The second essential of openness, and I think it's the hardest out of the 6 that I share, but it's taking it in and letting it go. So taking it in, are you actually hearing what they have to say? And then can you process it, and then can you let it go? Because what we do a lot of times as human beings is we hold on to the negative or mean or not nice things that people say to us. And then we let it affect the relationship going forward. And then even worse, we probably let it affect the next conversation that we go into. And the next
Is that the
relationship that we have.
nonverbal parts of it or all of it?
All of it. So like
Mm.
Kyle or Kenny, sorry to call you out, but you're doing it right now. Like your arms are crossed, right?
Crossed.
And that is, you might be cold. I don't know what's happening, but for some people that is it's a nonverbal tell of, I don't quite know about this here.
He's still all
And
over the hot idea, the hot conversation idea. That's
yeah,
what he's stuck.
yeah.
No, I need more
didn't like
heat. I
that
turned
part.
my heater off before this, and I'm cold. I am cold.
I would
My
not
wife keeps
survive
it
without
frigid.
that heater. I'd be shaking right now.
Dude,
Yeah.
I got mine back here. I probably need to roll back and turn it up. But no,
See, now we have a conversation about it, and I know, but for most people, they won't call that
They won't
out or
know.
ask about that, and they'll just assume Kenny doesn't like what I'm saying, so I'm gonna just stop talking right now and fade away into the distance. Anyways, and then so
that
then the
what keeps
last,
happening to me.
so that's when we talk about like there's so many different ways that little different tells, I'll say, that I can see if somebody is really open or
Mhm.
if they are just waiting for their turn to talk.
I see.
Can you flip us to the brutally honest side?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know when they're being brutally honest? And it's
Well,
not
you
the
can
good
look
kind?
at the body language of the person on the other side. And the way your body language, let's say I'm the one that's I'm gonna be brutally honest with somebody, right? Grace says I need to be 100% honest. So let's do it. I'm gonna go.
Go there.
And what you essentially do, if you're a leader that does that and you're like, I'm brutally honest with my people, I tell them how it is. Essentially what you are doing, and I'm saying this in a really loving way, is you are coming at your people with a dagger. And what is going to be their natural reaction? If somebody comes at you with a dagger, what's your natural reaction? Yeah. Kenny's doing
I
like
know
a
the answer.
defend,
Kung
punch,
fu.
fight, lean back, like all the different ways. But what it absolutely guarantees is that you are not listening to anything that they have to say. You are just trying to survive and defend and make it through this thing.
There's a weapon. There's a threat.
Mhm.
Now
Right.
I'm just in pure defense.
And so
That's what I really love about Kim Scott's Radical Candor. She changed my thinking on the brutally honest, because that is something I used to say and espouse as a positive trait about myself, is that I was just so blunt and brutally honest, and I just spoke my mind. I probably was honest. I probably wasn't very open. But the way she talked about it, she said, brutally honest is actually just self-serving. It's you've made the communication all about you, and it shows no empathy for the other person. Whereas if you're radically candid, it's the axis of care personally and challenge directly. And that's really changed how I've thought about on the honesty side of what you're sharing, to where cannot be honest, but empathetic to how this may be received or heard. And I try not to take responsibility for that, but to speak it in such a way that it gets the point across, like communication has occurred, like you didn't mistake my meaning, right? There
Yeah.
was no place for confusion. A lot of what you're saying strikes a lot of similarities, at least in my mind, which God help anybody who goes up there, pray for my therapist, is the concept or study of psychological safety. And which has a similar definition from Dr. Timothy Clark of a culture of rewarded vulnerability. Sounds a lot like if we're open, right? I can speak up. And if you have, I just blanked on her name, and I am so sorry, Dr. whoever you are at Harvard. Oh, Amy
Huddy.
There we go. She also published quite a lot, but it was about where you could speak up and without fear of retribution, reprisal. And it reminds me a lot of what you're saying, Grace, where can I be honest? Will the people I need to be honest with be open to it? Will it allow that real communication to happen? Because I think even having real communication, like you said, that would always give me hope. It sounds a lot like trust, sounds like psychological safety. It's that invisible glue that allows teams, and you've talked about it. You said you want to talk about it in the context of a team, to whatever's going to come at them, because nobody can predict. This is why I use the term bets in a lot of my work with senior leadership team. Like, what are the bets we're making for this year or the next 3 years? Is because if you have a crystal ball, please give me the lotto numbers, holler at your boy. But you don't. So we got to make bets. And so whatever comes our way, we got to trust that this team can handle it. And it sounds like the tools and the philosophy and the elements that you have line up with a lot of what I just shared with psychological safety and some of those that allow us to handle difficulty that is flung at them. And is that maybe the place that yours and Ken's work is born out of? Is like, teams can make a great plan, but if they're too rigid because they're like, well, the plan was made, I don't want to change the plan. Like, walk me through how teams are meant to grab this and work forward, especially in a world that is ever changing with economy, with, new administrations and all of these different things that may sit outside of their control, but they still bear responsibility for response.
Yeah, you said a lot of great things in there, Kenny. So, and you
I
referenced
said a lot of words.
so many fantastic people that I'm like, wow, he just has this at the top of his head. This is amazing. And what the reason that I do what I do is for the exact things that you're talking about, is that as leaders, we got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot. I got people over here that I got to deal with. I got I'm in Michigan, so the big talk right now is the ESTA law and like, what do we do with this? And it's just it's a whole HR nightmare. But anyways, and so there's a lot of things. The point is there's a lot of things going on for leaders. And with the words that you're saying, you're talking about psychological safety, which, yes, absolutely. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about trust. We're talking about vulnerability and resiliency and all of these things. But what I kept finding is that I would talk to leaders and they're like, yeah, that's great, Grace, but how the heck do I do that? What do I do? How do I do that? And so really and I've read so many different books by different leaders and learned so much, but the question I always felt like at the end of it is, okay, now what? Well, what do I do with it? How do I make this implementable? And that's really the focus of No Honesty, is to make things simple, tangible, and implementable for people. Is like, how do I practice this day in and day out to build the trust on my team? Because I'll have them ask like, well, where does trust fall into this? I'm like, it's all in the mix there, but you just got to work on it, right? And this is a way to work on your trust.
Is one of the first things that people can grasp onto is just watching the body language. Because I thought that was really pertinent of honesty. Like, if I'm overly on the brutal side, people will react by going backwards. If I'm not open, I've got arms crossed. Is that maybe one of the things leadership teams start to do, is just notice that? Or maybe what's that entry point for them? How do they start? Grace isn't in the room, but they're all in on openness and honesty. How are they maybe holding on to those lessons?
Yeah, it starts with education first, because for the exact same reasons that you guys asked me good questions around why do we think about openness and honesty differently, you got to start with educating your team around that, because they probably have some different ideas about what open and honest means. And some people might have some really positive associations. Maybe they've gone through a training with me or something. Fantastic for them. But some people have some pretty negative connotations with it. Like their last boss might have said, I have to have an open and honest conversation with you, and they got fired. And so
Right.
we have different definitions
Right.
for these things. And so you got to be really clear that, in this organization, this is what we mean by open and honest, and here's how we do it. And one of the tools that I give my clients for this exact reason, Kyle, is called the agreement. And the agreement is just a simple, powerful script that you can use at the start of any conversation, really ideally relationship, but we have relationships in our life for all time. So there's going to be some that are starting after this, but ones that you already have. And so quite simply, and this is on our website, if people want to go to our blog section, you can find it. I just did one on it this month, but this is the agreement. This is a script if you want to write it out. Will you agree with me on how we're going to communicate? I want you to be 100% honest, meaning I want you to be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. I promise I will be 100% open to it. I will listen without reservation. I'll put my needs and wants on pause for you. And in return, I'll be honest with you, and I ask that you be completely open to it. Start on any conversation like that. Wow, are we giving people some real clarity on how the communication we want and expect to have going forward is going to look like?
How many leadership lessons have we all sat through or learned, or managers or whatever, where it's about setting expectations. Talk about setting expectations for communication at like masterclass level.
I love that you said that, because I was thinking through the expectations thing as well, Kyle. And we set expectations around project or something long term, but very often it's not around a meeting, conversation, even a group discussion or something, which is, Grace, it sounds like has been a big focus of yours. Is I love make it a practice. That's something I've been thinking a lot about over the last few years, is like, I don't want, New Year's resolutions or anything. It's like, what's a practice I want to bring into my life? Something that I can use regularly to where it sort of like gets in my bones. And it sounds like a lot of your work is, how do we take this and make this an everyday thing, which is really influential on overall culture, because how we communicate anything is how we communicate everything, right? Verbal and non-verbal, email, text, memos, or cheesy posters on the wall, which I'm not totally opposed to.
GIFs,
just hang in there.
A communicator.
Yes, I am also a meme or a good Bitmoji, especially if it's on your birthday or something like that.
And
with lasers.
Free tip
if you're an iPhone user, like God intended.
And if you're listening to this
there,
one,
I'm not an iPhone fan.
Oh, good. Me neither. The question is it GIF or GIF? By the way, that's question number 3 in the next round. It's going to be that.
It's GIF for sure.
It's going to get people. Yep. You know where I'm going. I love the power of 3, and you've given 2 really good. One is start with education, and I love that open and honest gets thrown around, and so everybody probably has a different definition of it. So educate, set expectations, and I'm dying for the third piece, because like you can educate, you can set expectations, but I just have this intuition, Grace. You've got one more nugget on the other end of this.
Can you give me 2?
Okay. Doubling down.
And the reason I want to give you 2 is because they kind of go tandem together, kind of don't. And so it's what blocks us from being honest or from being open, right? Because you might be listening to this and you're like, this is great, Grace, but how do I actually do this? What do I need to look out for? And what I really believe is that in each person, we have an ability to be honest, to be truly and freely ourselves. There's somewhere in our life where we're doing it. We do have an ability to be open. There's somewhere in our life where we do listen to people without reservation, where we can put our needs and wants on pause. It's just about growing that, and especially growing in our teams and the places that it really matters. And to do that, what we just simply need to do is remove the barriers that are in the way. So here's the 2 I'm going to give you. These are 2 of the practices I share with my clients. First one is on the honesty side of things. It is what we call fake you. Kind of sounds like a different F word, kind of on purpose there. I'm not going to say it out loud for, just for the ratings of this, but fake you. Fake you.
Happy to I'll volunteer as tribute.
There we go. So fake you is the facade we project rather than being 100% honest. And as I'm saying this, you know what fake feels like. You know when you walk into a conversation or into a relationship or into a team and you are being fake. and it is exhausting. And so my challenge to listeners is just watch out for it and ask yourself why. Why am I being fake here? What's going on? Where is there a conversation that I'm not having, or expectations aren't clear, or whatever it is? Watch out for fake you, because that is an energy zapper and it is a relationship killer. Then on the other side, and what blocks us from being open, real simple here, y'all, is the wall. And the wall is a divide we put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. So quite literally in your mind, picture a brick wall. You put that up between you and somebody else, the communication is done. You might still be talking, quote unquote, but nobody's really listening. There's nothing real happening there. And we put up walls all the time to the people around us. Like I was talking about before, maybe it's when Kyle brings me an idea and his last idea wasn't so great. So I put up a wall
Always
to that.
Kyle.
It's always Kyle. I'm sorry, Kyle.
Dang it.
The
And
first
so I put
guy.
up a wall to that. I'm not there to listen to it. And, and then it's, there's a core values difference, right? And so I put up a wall to that. And I don't want to have that conversation. So I let that person who's a core values mismatch continue to be in my organization because I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have that conversation. I'm not open to it. And just so many different ways that we just block people out, a lot of times subconsciously, sometimes consciously. And then we look around and all we are is surrounded by these walls, these brick walls. And we wonder why we feel so isolated and alone and like we have no real relationships. It's because we keep blocking them out.
Well, and I have to imagine there's a reflection here of running into a brick wall that does force you to be a little bit fake you, right? Because now I'm playing this like game of like, well, I know there's a wall there. I don't really like you, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to say the thing, which is like right back into honesty.
Yeah, it's like ogres. It's got layers. Anybody catch that reference?
You ever ask somebody there wants a parfait? Say, hell no, I don't want no parfait. Sorry, that's just one of my favorite lines.
That
ever.
was really obscure of a good reference, but it was good. And I love that you did the voice. It was great. I was going to go with onions, is what I was going to do, but I mean,
you gotta get straight to the parfait, or you can go, I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder. Which is what I say to myself when I need a genuine smile in a photograph. In all seriousness, Grace, you talk about the wall. What if someone says, hey, but I've heard great fences make healthy neighbors or something like that? How do you delineate between walls and healthy boundaries? Because really Dr. Cloud may have something to say about that, right?
Yeah. I think about it as that's why it's in tandem. That's why the honesty comes back. It's not just, I'm open to what you have to say, Kenny, but if you say something that I really don't like or it hurts my feelings, and we have the expectation of being open and honest with each other, then it is my responsibility to tell you that. And then we figure it out from there, because then our relationship can continue to persist. Versus if I just retreat and I say, you crossed a boundary and I don't let you know about that. Yeah. Now there's this strange tension within our relationship. You don't even know why.
It's fake.
And there's no way to fix it.
What did you say to me, Kyle? I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's
real bad over here.
I'm going to start singing CeeLo, but there's you a deep cut sort of. But that is one reason why I like the idea of, you do have fences or a gate, like you at least like you have the gate you can walk in, like we can still, keep our boundaries, be healthy, be happy. But the wall is absolute shutout, like no one gets in or out sort of thing, which would, I'm guilty of this. If I feel like somebody's totally put up a wall to me, like, cool, then I'm not going to be honest with you, and I'll just smile and go about my business. Some of that is wisdom. You learn not to cast your pearls before swine sort of thing. Like if somebody's not willing to listen or be open, right? I can only try so many times before I'm going to figure out, my energy's not best spent here. Is it worth knocking down that wall, right? Because I would imagine honesty is a bit of a battering ram to somebody's wall. And then we say, are we going to leave this wall down? Or are you going to build it back up? At least give that opportunity for the relationship.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And the way that I think about it is in that scenario, you have, really in any scenario, in any relationship, you have three choices. Are you going to work on it to make it better? Are you going to leave it as is and deal with the status quo and the problems? Or are you going to leave it? Those are the choices.
Right. I
dig it.
I really appreciate the way you've educated us, the way you've helped us set expectations. You gave us some practical tools to apply and know how to be more open and honest and not just throw those words around. I learned a lot about not open isn't just let it fly, but seeking, to put my stuff to the side for a second. So this has been a wonderful conversation. Grace, is there anything we didn't cover that you feel like would has to be said, or maybe if not, where can they connect with you or learn more about No Honesty? KNOW Honesty, by the way, if you are not familiar.
Really important distinction. Thank you for doing
Which
that. Thank you also for asking if there's anything. And I think what I really want to make clear to leaders is that the word that we use is pursuit. This is a pursuit. I don't expect you to listen to this one podcast, or even the leaders that I work with on an ongoing basis. I tell them all the time, I don't expect you to be perfect at this. I'm not perfect at this, but I do expect that you're on the pursuit, that you're on the journey towards this, and that you're working at it day in and day out, going into each conversation. I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be open here, and watch how that transforms your relationships. That's the one thing I really want people to feel like you don't have to have it perfect today.
Wow. And if they needed to get in touch with you or wanted to learn more besides the book, is there a website or?
Yeah, book is great. And website is nohonesty.com, KNOW, important distinction there. And then if you just want to reach out to me, my email is grace@nohonesty.com. I love having conversations about this kind of stuff. We could go for another 3 hours and get really deep into it. So if you're into that, or if you just have a quick question of how the heck do I deal with this, let's talk about it.